The film starts with a cartel leader swimming in the pool. He noticed his watch sinking at the bottom and dived to reach it. Suddenly, a hitman wearing black diving suit grappled him and suffocated him to death. When the bodyguard reacted, the killer had already fled. The hitman is Arthur Bishop, also known as the Mechanic. He escaped from the manor and jumped into the river. After completing the mission, Arthur returned to Louisiana. In order to conceal his identity, he lived on a small island. As the target was reported as an accidental drown the next day, Arthur met his mentor Harry to receive his commission. However, few days later Arthur received a new mission, not expecting that the target was none other than Harry. Arthur met with Dean, another partner of the company. He explained the details to him. 6 months ago they were entrusted to take on a job, and deployed 5 agents to carry out the mission. Ended up having all 5 agents killed. Only Dean and Harry knew the mission. He thought Harry must have betrayed them. They checked Harry's bank account. He received an overseas transfer of $20 million. In addition, Harry got divorced and still carrying a troublemaking son. These conditions made him easy to sell out. He must be eliminated. The reason why Arthur was chosen is because their relationship, he can approach and take out Harry sharply. Dean gave Arthur 2 days, or will he find someone else to do it? After a struggle, Arthur dialed Harry's phone and told him to take the documents and leave the building ASAP, or Dean's men would be coming. Harry headed to parking lot as he was told, then Arthur suddenly appeared in front of him. He immediately understood that Arthur was here to kill him. He did not explain and resist, but handed over his antique pistol to Arthur. He knew that even if Arthur did not kill him, Dean would. He'd rather die in Arthur's hands. Arthur hesitated a little and eventually shot him. The next day, Arthur saw Harry's son Steve at the graveyard. Steve, who thought Harry was killed by carjackers, planned to kill several of them to vent his anger. At night, Steve purposely parked his car in a remote place. As expected, he met a carjacker who wanted to rob the car. When Steve was about to shoot the carjacker, Arthur suddenly stopped him. It turns out that Arthur kept watching him from afar for fear that he might cause trouble. A few days later, Steve calmed down and asked Arthur to teach him combat techniques. Arthur knew that Steve was impulsive and arrogant, which was not suitable for being a killer, so he refused. But Steve said that his father chose Arthur instead of him. Now his father is gone, he has left nothing for him. Arthur owes his father, it should be returned to him now. His words triggered Arthur. He looked at Harry's photos and agreed to Steve's request. Arthur first took Steve to the animal shelter to adopt a Chihuahua, and then asked Steve to take his dog to the coffee shop for an hour. For 3 weeks, he had been doing the same. Although Steve did not understand the reason for doing so, he did as he was told. In the rest of the time, Arthur gave Steve various trainings. After another several days, Arthur gave Steve a live tutorial. They visited an illegal arms dealer. Arthur took out money, but suddenly strangled the dealer, and faked his death as an accident. Next, Arthur offered Steve a task. It turns out that Arthur had asked Steve to go to the coffee shop every day just to get close to his target Burke. Burke is a hitman from another organization. The only routine he kept repeating is the coffee shop. He has 2 fetishes, Chihuahua and young boy. Arthur has prepared lethal potion for him. Burke invited Steve to the bar. Steve took out the potion and prepared to dose it while Burke was away. On second thoughts, he thought that he could finish him off just like Arthur, so he didn't dose him. Arthur also told Steve that never get in Burke's car. But Steve went right to Burke's house. The two started to undress each other when they got home. Steve found a chance to choke Burke with a belt, but Burke wrestled him off his back. Fortunately, he found a screwdriver to eventually finish Burke off. Their next target is Andrew, who runs a cult. He not only earns money from TV interviews, but also frequently tortures female believers. Arthur planned to overdose adrenaline into Andrew to make Andrew die of an accident. After careful deployment, they came to the hotel and sneaked into the vent of Andrew's room. They observed the situation and was waiting for the opportunity. However, Arthur saw that Andrew was injecting ketamine, which would neutralize adrenaline, so their previous plan would fail. They had to change their plan. When Andrew's bodyguard went out to make a phone call, Arthur entered the room and inserted the inspection device into Andrew's throat, choking him to death. After Andrew's guards came in, they thought it was an overdose accident. At this time, Steve accidentally dropped a screw and alerted the guards. Seeing that they could not hide, they went on guns blazing afterwards. And escaped from the roof with construction cables, left the hotel within the panicked crowds. They separated and to meet at home. At the airport, Arthur finds a supposed victim of the mission that Harry allegedly sold out. He confronts the hitman, who tells Arthur that he was paid by Dean to kill the others in South Africa and fake his own death, so that Dean could seal the failed mission to cover up his own shady dealings. He also reveals that Dean framed Harry and tricked Arthur into killing him. He then attempts to kill Arthur, but Arthur ultimately kills him in the ensuing struggle. When Arthur came to the dock to take the speedboat home, he sensed the situation was fishy. He later found several henchmen searching for him. Arthur ambushed them instead. He also knew that Steve at home must be held as hostage. Steve received Arthur's call and took out the hinted pistol under the cushion to wipe the 3 henchmen. Arthur then asked Steve to load up all gears onto the ship. But Steve accidentally discovered his father's pistol, and he immediately figured out that Arthur was the murderer of his father. Instead of asking Arthur, he secretly kept the gun. Later, Arthur located Dean, and called him. When they were talking, Dean found that Arthur's coordinate was right in his building. He ordered his bodyguard to escort him to leave. In fact, Arthur was not there. He lured Dean out of the building. After seeing Dean's bodyguard come out, he bumped in. Steve also drove a bus to block Dean's way ahead. Then, Arthur used a forklift to ram Dean. They managed to revenge for Harry. On the way back, when Steve was reaching for a bottle of water, Arthur saw Harry's pistol was in Steve's pocket. And his words were hinting to revenge. They came to a gas station. When Steve got off to refuel, he clandestinely spilled gasoline outside the vehicle, and then went to a cover to ignite Arthur's car with his father's gun. The whole station was burst into flames. Prompted by vanity, Steve later came to Arthur's house again. He played the record that Arthur did not allow him to, and drove Arthur's car away. While listening to the song, he suddenly saw a piece of paper on the co-driver's seat. It says, "Steve, if you are reading this, then you're dead." The car was simultaneously blown up, and the record player in the house also lit up, burning the house into debris. Arthur was not dead. In the footages of the gas station, he had rolled out from his car before the explosion. Arthur did warn Steve about his vanity, but now the only thing remains is the shining pistol with carved writing which says, "Victory loves preparation." Since faking his own death, Arthur Bishop has been living quietly in Rio de Janeiro under the name Santos. One day, he is approached by a courier, Renee Tran, who knows his true identity and explains that her employer wishes Arthur to kill 3 targets and stage their deaths as accidents. Or she will expose Arthur by leaking the footage of him surviving the car explosion years ago. Arthur doesn't fall into her stake at all. Instead, he takes a photograph of her to identify who she is, which triggers the guards flooding in. He manages to fend off the guards with various props at the scene. But seeing more guards coming, he escapes by jumping onto a glider. After getting rid of Tran, he sneaks back and explodes his yacht in case anyone finds trace about him. Then head to Thailand. There, he takes shelter at the resort island beach house of his friend, May, and learns that Tran is working for Rhea Crane, an old friend of his. Some days later, a bruised woman, Gina Thornton, appears at May's resort for first aid before returning to a boat anchored nearby. At night, May sees her being beaten by a man aboard the boat and alerts Arthur. But Arthur acts callously, thinking it would be a setup, while May insists on going in. To protect May, Arthur agrees on the rescue. Together, they rescue Gina, but in the scuffle, the man's head hits a bollard and dies. Arthur searches for evidence of the man's identity in vain, then sets the boat ablaze. While May tends to Gina's injuries, Arthur finds that Gina is also connected to Crane, and concludes that Crane anticipated Arthur would develop relationship with her. Crane would then kidnap her to make Arthur take the assassination jobs. On being confronted with his theory, Gina reveals that Crane had threatened the children's shelter in Cambodia that she runs unless she participated. Over the next few days, Arthur pretends to be in love with Gina to lure Crane out, but ended up truly falling in love with her. As expected, Crane's mercenaries arrive and abduct them. Crane keeps Gina as hostage to ensure Arthur completes the assassinations. The first target is a warlord named Krill, held in a Malaysian prison. Arthur begins to formulate his plan to make a gum bomb with fuse hidden in cigarettes. He also disguised as a wanted man, so that the police would arrest him and put him in jail. Inside the prison, he gains Krill's trust by killing a traitor who attempts to kill Krill. Krill invited him for a private conversation for appreciation. He then kills Krill himself by choking him. He also posed the corpse praying to temporarily deceive the guards. Later in chaos, Arthur rapidly inserts the gum bomb and fuse onto the wall to blow his way out. He applies anti-shark ointment before jumping into the water. With the locator device, Crane's operatives soon find him and help him escape. The next target is Adrian Cook, a Sydney-based billionaire and former trafficker of underage sex workers. He lives on the top floor of the building, in which there were 1-meter thick concrete and alarm devices. But he also had an overhanging pool, which could be a point of interest. Then, Arthur contacts a housing agent and pretends to buy the apartment below the pool. There, he bypasses the tight security of Cook's penthouse, breaks the glass at the bottom of his overhanging pool, using a tube containing chemicals that cause the glass to crack, sending him plummeting to death like flushing a poop off the toilet. While relaying details of the third target, Crane allows Arthur to speak to Gina, who repositions the camera, enabling Arthur to identify Crane's boat. The guard finds out Gina's intention, immediately shuts down the stream. Judging from the ship number, Arthur attempts a rescue. He successfully wipes out some guards on the boat, but Crane knew Arthur would be coming and thwarts his rescue, urging him to continue on his assassinations. The final target is Max Adams, an American arms dealer in Varna, Bulgaria. While planning his attempt, Arthur realizes that the targets are Crane's major competitors in arms dealing. Maybe he could tilt the scale if he manages to persuade Max helping him. He sneaks into Max's fortress by hiding in a medical chopper, and makes his way into the elevator silo after interfering the security cam. He then sabotages the elevator with a grenade, forcing Max retreating to the vault. There, he finally met Max in person. However, instead of killing him, Arthur warns him of Crane's plan and recruit his help. Max surprisingly agrees to assist. He asks Arthur to fake his death in an accidental submarine explosion. Then they bail out underwater. Arthur then reports to Crane, directing him to the submarine to find Max's corpse. After settling Max, Arthur dives back to the submarine. To greet Crane's troopers, he deploys numerous booby traps. Few moments later, the troop comes as expected. They gradually getting killed either by the mounted machine gun, wired explosives, or Arthur's bullseye marksmanship. He single-handedly decimates Crane's mercenaries, then makes for Crane's boat anchored nearby. On the boat, he fights off more of Crane's men and rescues Gina. But he also discovers the boat is rigged with explosives. For Gina's safety, he puts her into emergency pod to leave first. Then there goes more mercenaries. Arthur continues on overpowering them before facing Crane. Somehow, Crane is no better than his mobs. He was tied by Arthur with a metal chain. Time is ticking. The bomb explodes, killing Crane and seemingly Arthur. Gina is rescued from the pod, while Max returns to the dock deploring Arthur until a surveillance camera catches his attention. Months later, Gina returns to Cambodia and continues her teaching duties. But she is surprised when Arthur turns up there as well. Max discovers how Arthur survived. Again, from the cam footage, he escaped in a watertight chain locker before the explosion, and walked out when it was salvaged. He destroys the evidence as a token of gratitude for sparing his life, and enabling him to monopolize the arms trade, by taking market share from Arthur's main victims. That's the end of today's video. If you do enjoy watching it, feel free to leave a like and consider to subscribe to the channel. And I will see you guys in the next one. Abyssal signing out.